Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome back to A to Z around the world of music. Welcome back, Anna. How's things? How's summer going for you?
Oh my goodness, Miami is hot, 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 but it's
Give
nice
us
nonetheless.
give us a temperature in Fahrenheit and then give it to us in degrees so we can please everyone.
Well, I mean, like it's actually been getting up to like 80 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe like 85. They were also like saying, it was gonna like maybe go up to like 95. Like
Yeah.
90 or 95. So, in degrees Celsius, it's 29 degrees
Mm,
Celsius. So
29
it's
degrees Celsius,
yeah,
right?
it's been getting hot, or at least that's what
Okay.
Google says. That's what Google is saying.
Okay, interesting. Right. So, you want to know how hot it is in the country that we're talking about today?
Okay. How how hot is may I say the name? Are you gonna say the
Oh,
name?
please do.
How how hot is it in Algeria?
At the time we're recording, it's about 23 degrees in the middle of Algeria. So, you know what? It's not too bad. Not too bad,
No,
actually. I was
it's
expecting
definitely
it to be a little bit hotter. I'm not going to
it's
lie.
definitely less hotter than Miami right now, or Florida in general.
Indeed. But we're going to get into some hot topics today. We're going to get into some kind of hot takes around
Oh
music
God.
because I think I may have discovered by researching Algeria, I may have discovered a genre which is kind of considered like the Arabic punk music. Now, you tell me if this is the case, because we're going to listen to and we're going to talk about numerous different artists in a genre Algeria is known for called Ray. Okay, or Rai.
Okay.
Forgive me again if I mispronounce things. But you might be able to hear my microphone has improved a little bit. I'm coming a bit crisper into your ears. And as a result, hopefully the production of this stuff is gonna increase and increase and increase. We'll have another episode for you probably by the end of the month, but it'll be a little
Yes,
bit shorter, so we'll talk about it at the end. Anyways, let's
definitely.
travel into Algeria. Anna, do you know where Algeria is on this big globe of ours?
Oh my goodness gracious, you're gonna torture me again.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't know, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. I'm gonna say it's probably somewhere either I'm gonna give you two choices. It's
Yeah,
either somewhere in the African continent or like the European continent.
it's in the African continent.
Oh,
North
okay, so I wasn't
Africa, to
far
be
off.
specific. Yeah, not too far. Although we are going to actually talk a little bit about the European continent just for a second, because when I play some of this music to you guys, you might be thinking to yourselves, how does this even sound Arabic? There's a reason why it might distinguish itself from, say, that of Middle Eastern music. But let's talk about it, right? So,
Yeah.
Algeria's music genres are really diverse. The most popular one that I mentioned is known as Rai, or Ray. This genre of music is actually really heavily Western influenced and has found popularity in both France and Spain, largely thanks to the Algerian expats that are living there.
Oh.
Canonically, however, I thought I just talked about Spain, and we're going to start there. Anna, have you ever heard of Andalusi music?
No, I have not heard of Andalusi music.
Okay.
That's new to
Now,
me.
there was a country long, long ago known as Al-Andalus. All right.
Andalus.
And this is what the Arabic world would have called Spain, Iberia, as it was previously known, because this genre of music dates back to the 5th and the 9th century, where Muslims control the area of Spain. These group of Muslims were known as the Moors. Okay, and they controlled the grand majority of southern Spain. You can find a lot of their kind of influence in like the architecture, especially in the city of like Granada and other little castles and stuff down in the south of Spain. It didn't last long though, but Andalusian music is basically like classical Arabic kind of music. Okay, and it would have been incredibly popular in Spain. Now, how does this relate to Algeria? Well, let me tell you. Following what was known as the Reconquista, which is the Spanish Reclamation, Christian Reclamation, and the expulsion of Muslims. So they basically told them, everybody, get out. This happened around like the 15th century. And the Andalusian customs and traditions were forced to move further down south to an area known as the Maghreb region of North Africa, which is, today we know it as Morocco, Libya, Algeria, and Tunisia. Okay. But could you imagine that? Imagine having like, some customs and some music and some culture, and then all of a sudden a new group comes to power and is like, talk to you later. Get out.
That's most of history as we know it.
Yeah, sadly it is, all right, yeah. And that's what we're here to always chat to you guys about, is that we don't really like to get political or anything. We don't like to say our opinions much on the music itself, although, we can from time to time. But I'm just relating it as to how this kind of shaped the music of Algeria. So because they were all expelled, this type of Andalusian music was created in Algeria, and it became known as Garnati music. And this type of music would be considered kind of classical music of the Arabic world, much like I said earlier. Unlike, say, Western music, Western classical music, Garnati music has kind of various pieces and parts that really vary greatly. It has up to 5 modes. Whereas Western music typically has maybe 2. In these 5 modes, you've got the Nuba and you've got the Makamat, which I'm just going to focus on these 2 specific, because trying to explain the other types of modes, I'm no classical musician by any stretch of the imagination. I'm really not, and trust me, we'll try get to the modern interesting stuff as quick as possible. But I got to comment on this. So the Nuba, this is the instrumental structure with kind of vocal pieces that is played often slowly and softly, but they all kind of complement each other with a vocalist playing along with a melody. So you can take a listen to one of those now.
سرج يا فارس الطين للبهجة روحي يا خليلي شظايت من عبد مقامة للزهرة روح عيد رسلي توصل مركوب الحزين.
The Makamat, on the other hand, these are scales that are used in the Garnati music, and they differ that in which we would traditionally know in Western music. Western tones use traditional semitones with up to 12 octaves, whereas Makamat uses twice that amount and has up to 24 tones, along a quarter of the tones, usually like with flexibility in pitches. So they often deal with various different tones and emotions that go along with their music too. Similar to how you have major and minor keys. When you're playing your music, Anna, do you prefer to play it majorly or minorly?
It depends. I mean, people, always do that easy, comparison. If it sounds sad, it's minor. If it sounds happy, it's
Yeah.
major.
True.
So, yeah, it depends. But lately, I guess you can say my songs have been coming out major. Again, I always, how do I say? I always decipher the mode afterwards. So, yeah, it depends which mode of that song I'm playing in. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Let's get into the instruments of this type of music. Previously mentioned in our Afghan episode, we have the rubab. And if you don't remember, that is kind of like the instrument, like kind of like an Arabic kind of guitar. But speaking of the guitar, I bet you didn't know. Where does the guitar come from, Anna?
So I always thought that it came from, again, like it came from an Arabic background. It's an Arabic background where the guitar is from.
Yes.
I'm correct?
You are, because here's the thing, right?
I think it came from Egyptians.
Kind of. So originally, you have what was called the oud instrument, which would have been kind of around, say, like Turkey, Egypt, the Mediterranean kind of area, that we're kind of covering. But when the Al-Andalus was thriving, let's say at the time, there was a modification of this instrument, and it was known as the quitara. Now, quitara sounds very familiar to another instrument, does it not?
Guitarra.
Indeed, and that's because the Spanish may have reclaimed their homeland. They may have expulsed all of this kind of culture, but they did keep certain elements, and the guitarra was one of them, which they renamed to the guitar. They also made a couple of different adjustments to the guitar as well. But the guitarra, it contains 8 strings. It's made of animal intestines. Yuck. And a curved bowl bass. And it's usually tuned to play G3, E4, and A3 modes. Okay?
Oh.
So it's slightly different. I'll play you a little bit of what the guitarra sounds like. Guitarra. I may be pronouncing it incorrectly once again, but take a listen to that. Okay, our next instrument is very, 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 very old. It's called the kanun. All right. This is thought to be dated back to the Assyrian Empire, but it was mostly used during the Byzantine Empire. So we're talking like, goodness, like 1100s, 1200s, even earlier than that, but like way earlier than that. If we're talking like the Assyrians, like really, really early. It is a trapezoid-based board instrument, and it has over 26 strings with different sets of strings tuned to the same pitch. They are kind of tuned by small instruments known as mandals. So basically what you're doing is, by tuning these different strings, they can be used to match any type of the makamat. Like they're used to play certain melodies. That they need for a certain part of the song. So it's either played on a table or it's played on the lap. The kanun players have to manipulate the mandals with their left hand while plucking the strings with their right hand, essentially tuning while they're playing. So could you imagine that, Anna, if all of a sudden like you are, rocking out on stage, and then all of a sudden you say, "Hey, wait a second," and just start, tuning your guitar down to drop D and drop E and drop whatever on stage.
I mean, some artists do that, like when
They
they have to
can.
change the song. Yeah. So, I mean, if I would
It's
have
rare, but it
to.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
This is usually played in ensembles, but you can also find solo performances. Have a listen to this guy playing it just by himself.
Mm.
It's kind of often showcasing kind of cultural heritage, education, and cultural preservation, and they kind of show it off as say like national concerts as well. Two other Algerian kind of instruments that are pretty prominent in their music: the mandolin. We'll get into that when we kind of reach Italy, because I do believe it is an Italian instrument. And you've also got the ney, which is like a long reed. All right. So we covered Andalusian music in its kind of ancient form, but let's get into a kind of more modern form. We have what's called Hausi music, and this is the kind of contemporary version of Andalusian music in a city called Teleshmen in western Algeria. I'm gonna get like a robot to pronounce the name of this place if I'm incorrect. Temletchen or whatever.
Tlemcen.
So this is believed to be where it kind of comes from, and it's where it's highly respected today. This form of music is played traditionally at weddings and other social events using a rhythm known as zidan, which its unique kind of beat. Lyrically, it's often kind of poetic and talks about love and social issues. Instrumentally, though, it uses all the kind of previous instruments that I mentioned, listed along with kind of percussion, such as a darbuka, which is a goblet kind of drum. Okay. Another type of Andalusian music is also known as malouf. And this one's kind of poignant because this is kind of what you would consider maybe like traveling or nomadic music, or even how I like to depict it, refugee music. It's related to refugees who would have fled from Spain into the Maghreb, so they would have went into Tunisia, Algeria, and Libya. It's kind of popular mostly in North Africa and accompanies kind of traditional harmonies of vocals with violin medleys and percussion. It's kind of slow. This is the type of music you would hear on like the back of a camel, like going through the desert, you know? That kind of
Just post up the Bluetooth speaker behind the camel.
Yeah, and just put it in its mouth, or it in its hump. I don't know. Well, when I say though that sentence, like this is the type of music you imagine while you're on camelback, there is a kind of stereotypical tune going through your head. Like, don't lie, you know, kind of that like
Arabian Nights.
Little bit, yeah, exactly. If you ever seen like the beginning of like Aladdin or Lawrence of Arabia and stuff, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Right.
Oh yeah, no, most definitely. All right.
Phew. Okay. So we breezed through some of the classics. Let's get a little bit more modern. You've got this thing called Shabi music, which is a little bit more modern and hosts the origins of other genres while kind of borrowing from classical ones. A typical song features kind of mournful Arabic or Berber vocals. The Berbers were kind of like a nomadic group from, say, like Morocco, Algeria, and Libya. And I believe they have their own kind of variation of Arabic. I'm not 100% sure on that. But they basically set this chorus, they can sit against, you know, an orchestral backdrop of a dozen musicians, so up to about 12, violins and mandolins, swelling and falling to a piano medley and the clap of percussion beats. Take a listen to what I'm talking about. Here you go. We have one man to thank for the popularity and the form of shabby music. His name is El Hajj Mohammed El Anka, who I'm going to refer to by several different names for time's sake, and also because my accent when it comes to this is gonna, I don't want to brutalize the man's name. But speaking of his name, it has an interesting and somewhat sad origin. On the day of his birth, his father was very, very ill. Okay. So his uncle had to be there to register his birth name. And this led to a mistake of his uncle saying the following words: Ana, Ana, Kalu, which in Arabic means I am his uncle. Right?
Analu.
Ana Kalu. There you go. You bet
So
you
that's
didn't
where
know.
his name came from.
Well, no, hold on. Because presumably there was a miscommunication as the nurse registered his name as Halo. Instead of saying Kalu, he said, Halo or Halo, leading to his birth name becoming Ait Karab Mohammed Idir Halo.
Oh,
All
wow.
right. It's a mouthful. A mouthful, I know, and I still have more to go because this guy goes by like several different names, okay?
My goodness.
And he was noticed by a sheikh. In Arabic kind of customs, sheikhs are kind of like elders. They're kind of seen as, community leaders and things like this. This guy was a community leader in terms of music. His name was Mustafa Nador. He owned an orchestra group. And at the age of 13 in Algiers, the capital, they took him in as a tarji player. Tarji is a different type of instrument. I failed to mention it earlier. It's kind of like more percussion and stuff. And they would later teach Halo how to play the mandola, which he really loved. Okay, so after the death of his mentor, El Hajj took over the orchestra group and continued to perform and produce classical Algerian music. But by 1928, he began his first recording debut to the public with over 27 discs, produced by Columbia Records, who I am shocked are that old. Columbia Records recording in 1928. Goodness. And they also took part in the inauguration of Radio PTT Algiers. So they've been playing for a very long time. This popularity of this type of music, when played on the radio, gained lots of widespread acclaim in North Africa, and he was invited by the King of Morocco to perform, and also toured France in the early 1930s. France is going to feature quite heavily in this episode because I don't know if you're aware, Anna, but France colonized Algeria at one point in time. Algeria was a part of the French Empire, along with other countries that you may not be familiar with. Yeah, do you know of anywhere else that France had its footprints in, per se?
I know Morocco. I know what's it called? Louisiana for like New Orleans and such like that. So I know that much. Yeah, New Orleans.
Have you ever been to New Orleans?
No, but that is one place that I will definitely go in my lifetime. I definitely have to go out there.
It's like a very cultural, musical place. I'd like to check it out myself.
And there is a place in the Caribbean or the islands of some sort that also, again, France did take over. I don't want to say French Polynesia, but that.
Yeah, Haiti would have been one of them. Yeah, French Polynesia. Vietnam at one point. Surprisingly enough, yeah. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yes!
Let's continue talking about El Hajj for 1 second. His story is almost to a close. He got to play for the King of Morocco. He also said that one of his elements of his sound kind of changed in 1932 because they changed up instruments. He worked with what was called a luthier to craft a bigger mandola. Yeah, so a luthier would have been a guy who kind of modifies instruments, let's say. I'm assuming it comes from the term luth, like lute. So he found that the mandolas used by the orchestra were a little bit too high pitched and not loud enough. So he asked a luthier to make one much bigger, and that mandol was to become his main instrument. All right. So after World War II, Elanka, as he's otherwise known, was invited to produce music for the successor to Radio PTT, known as ENRS, Algiers Radio. The music that he promoted became best known as Chabi, and that would later go on to teach at university at Levels. He became a professor of music, and a lot of the students that he would have had also started to contribute to that genre itself. All right. In total, he recorded over 360 songs.
Wow. That's awesome.
Think of your favorite audience. All right, let me say that again. Think of your favorite artist, audience. How many songs do they have? I bet it's not as much as this dude. Sadly, he died in 1978, and he's buried in the town of El Qatar. So, here's the thing about Chabi. What distinguishes this Algerian Chabi are the sounds in the poems. The sound represents a sad memory of times gone by often about a heartwarming romance, kind of emotion, or sessions with friends or memories. It gives a kind of beautiful background to the country of Algeria, and the words create wonderful pictures. Today, there are hundreds of music singers who were inspired by these. Beautiful music that can be heard all over the world. And it is this music that describes the reality of life, and it even includes tales and stories of, say, religious contexts. We talk about things like Muhammad and other types of stuff too. All right. Now, I bring up this genre to say is that this would have been a real classic style right up until we get into a little bit of turbulence in Algeria's actual history in the 60s. This is when Algeria was kind of fighting for its independence. Now, it was fighting for its independence a good bit before this, but this is when things, escalated into actual conflict. And during all of this, and a little bit before it, we have what's known as Rai music. Okay. This is by far the most popular genre in Algeria. This is what it's definitely kind of known for. It can kind of trace its origins to a port city called Oran, mostly among its poor residents. This is kind of like the music for the everyman in this city. Although the everyman, okay, not to discriminate based on wealth or anything. Oran was known as Little Paris after the years following World War I, because it was a very diverse city full of different cultures, a lot of different nightclubs and cabarets, which really contrasted very differently from most of the kind of Islamic conservative cities in the surrounding area. If you had to give a city the title of Little Paris in America, Anna, what city would you give it to?
Little Paris. Oh my God. I mean, Little Paris in a state or a city in the States?
Like a city, a kind of cultural city known for its music, known for its art, known for all that business.
Oh my God. I mean, it depends, because it's either going to be New York or it's going to be again somewhere in LA, or it's going to be again somewhere in again New Orleans, because it's got a lot of music there as well. It really depends. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's much to really compare it to. I mean, they're kind of apples and oranges, I suppose, on different sides of the world. But this city, it became a place known for its nightlife and its music, and Rai definitely found its place in the center of all this hustle and bustle. And also because at the time, there was kind of growing sentiment of counterculture and the idea to modernize Islamic values and attitudes. And this is why I feel like this is Arabic punk music. Because when you look at the lyrics and you translate them into English, my goodness, this stuff would not really fly in the Middle East, let me tell you. Okay.
Okay. We're stirring the pot in the Middle East.
Oh, we're going to get very controversial right here. So let me tell you a little bit about the singers of the genre. They're known as cooks, and for the women, they're known as caicates. Okay.
Caicates.
Again, I am butchering this pronunciation, right? But lyrically, Rai focuses on the gritty reality of urban life. Unlike, say, the poetry that you would have found in shabby music, this is a lot more raw. And as a result, the lyrics were considered punk, vulgar, and controversial compared to the other genres. This would have a really big effect to this music as a whole, and we'll get onto that a little bit later. But Rai itself, the word, derives from the Algerian Arabic word of advice or opinion. And this would lead to a lot of different chorus repetition of thought-provoking lyrics for the underclasses of Algerian society. Would you ever put your advice or opinions in your music, Anna?
My advice and opinions, of course.
Would you ever put any controversial ones in there?
Depends on the topic. If I want to get controversial.
Yeah, you could make a song saying pineapple on pizza ain't that bad, or just split your audience 50-50,
Most definitely.
Oh goodness. Hey guys, let us know in the comments where you stand on that whole debate. Anyways, after World War II, the city of Iran was very much divided into Jewish, French, Spanish, and native Algerian quarters, and each district hosted a mix of different styles of music, and often French tourists would examine the music of each kind of district and bring examples of it back home. So because all these different ethnicities, all these different kind of districts are mixing along with each other, the music style started to change. So music styles from each kind of district would often mix and create various influences on each other in Rai music, such as French cabaret and Spanish flamenco, which is very notable in its composition when you actually hear the guitars. Like, take a listen to some of this Rai music right here, and it's almost indistinguishable, bar the lyrics, from, say, that of kind of classical Spanish music.
البراد يا زينة ربي للواد وجيبي نعناع جديد يا زينة ماليش عليك لا خرطوني عينيك يا زينة قوليلي واه ولا لا ولا قطعيني الياس
Now, thanks to independence, Algeria was now on the world stage by itself. Ooh, congratulations, guys. Algerians were now in touch with music from all over the world. And they began importing and listening to music from, say, the West, listening to it, of course, from the East. They got in touch with different types of music, such as reggae and folk. And they would put the different styles of this into Rai music. To separate itself from the older styles, new Rai musicians would often be called Cheb or Chaba, meaning young, to distinguish themselves from older Rai artists. So what you started to see happen was there was a little bit of a split. Some of the older kind of Rai musicians wanted to keep the kind of old sound, whereas newer ones wanted to mix it up, start to genre fuse lots of different things together. All right. Here we get into the bit of the first kind of wave of controversy. Rai music would find itself as a popular form of rebel music against French colonialism in the 1930s, all the way up until the 1960s. However, it would then go on to be censored in the new independent Algeria, because during this decade, there was a big kind of switch of conservative views and cultural reformation. Given the lyrics were often kind of controversial and sometimes even sexually explicit, rhyme music and the culture of Oran was stifled and censored in multiple different ways.
Oh, wow.
The biggest way was
They weren't
women
joking.
rye singers. I was not, no, yeah. The biggest one was women rye singers started to decrease rapidly as a result. We're going to talk about one rye singer in particular who is a woman. But my goodness, you cannot tell when you actually listen to her. But here's what happened to the genre. A lot of tapes were often banned and musicians were even deported. We're going to even get into when some rye musicians faced death threats and even murder to some degree from a lot of these kind of Islamic cultural conservative extremists. Let's put it that way. Yeah. However, this kind of started to change at the turn of the 1980s with a little bit more of a liberal government now in power, and they allowed for more kind of expression. And during this time also, there was a lot of importation of Western instruments and synthesizers in particular that would really start to change the genre even further. And it would even be rebranded as pop rye. Okay. Despite the liberal shift, though, the government still kind of disliked the genre and they tried to censor it by banning an import. They tried to ban importations of blank cassettes, which led to a black market of rye music and underground discos to perform it throughout Algeria and also international. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Could you imagine? Yeah, you can't go into like a music store anymore. You can't find your favorite artist, but some guy just comes up on the street, is like, "Yo, I got you. Here you go.
I got something for you. Check my back."
Exactly. Speaking of which, we mentioned in there cassettes. Now that's a real throwback. Anyone born before 2000 won't know what that is. After 2000 won't know what that is. Did you ever own cassettes, Anna?
No, I didn't, just because I was still very young when cassettes were around, and then CDs started taking over by the time that I was getting into music and discovering music and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
because I'm slightly older than you are, not by
what
much.
A cassette is.
Yeah, I'm slightly older than you are, not by much, but I do recall owning some cassettes.
Huh.
Yeah, I remember listening to a Bob Marley cassette once. It was typically only being able to be played in my dad's car. That's all I remember. But I do somewhere have a sound system that still has a cassette player in it. Don't ask me why, but it's still rocking. It still works. I mean, the audio quality of cassettes obviously weren't great. Compared to that of CD players or even vinyl players, but they were convenient at the time. But how the times have changed.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
And the time changed for rye music too. It became really, really popular in France. Thanks in part to obviously French tourists, but also because there were a lot of Algerians who moved to France during this period of time. And a lot of the musicians actually moved over there too. So, strangely enough, rye music didn't get popular per se only in Algeria. It really took off in France. Places like Paris, Lyon, Marseille, anywhere that there was an Algerian community, you were guaranteed to find this type of music being played. So much so that the Algerian government started to notice this. And in a complete 180, the government then began to promote the genre and claim it as part of their cultural heritage. Presumably so that they could profit off of it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. the greedy bastards. By doing this, they would also try to attempt to, quote unquote, clean up rye music by altering the lyrics to make it appeal to more conservative listeners. So no more sex talk, no more talk of drinking alcohol, no more anti-government sentiments, nothing like that. That'd be like if like the British government went to the Sex Pistols and were like, no more naughty lyrics, boys. Stop it. You can perform your music, you can play for the Queen, but you can't play that song. You know, it's quite wild.
Yes,
Plus,
yes, it is.
always the punk genre, though. In 1988, Rye was the voice, and it was at the forefront of protesting against state-sponsored violence. Students and the youth of Algeria began small uprisings in universities and in the streets. This led to a huge crackdown, where over 500 civilians were killed during this time of unrest. And would you believe the government actually blamed the genre of music for stoking anarchy?
Oh my goodness gracious.
Very
Okay.
It's something so simple like playing music to hide, own flaws. You're going to start to see that a lot in other types of countries, believe you me.
Of course. Who knew
Around this time,
such a struggling what's it called, history?
Around this time, you had a guy by the name of Khaled, or Cheb Khaled, who was known as the King of Rye. And one of his songs, El Harba Wain, in English is known to flee, but where. And I'm going to just quickly read some of the lyrics of this because it's quite poignant, if I do say so myself. He says, here's some of the lyrics that they quote in the song. The world is gone. It's over. There's no one left who's okay. Like a smashed mirror, there is no balance. The house in which there was gold, the house is now empty. These hearts, which held the answers, are no longer there. To flee, but where? To flee, but where? To flee, but where? Tell me, oh poor soul, I have cried, I have suffered. You ask me, Anna, that kind of sounds like the first Arabic emo music too. If I'm being real, pretty powerful though.
It's like, who hurt him?
I guess the government.
Yeah,
this point,
Jesus.
I guess the government and just society. I guess at this point, it's
Oh God.
pretty striking stuff. So censorship really followed right up until the 90s, but not from the government per se. Islamic fundamentalists grossly objected to the genre's promotion of alcohol consumption and sexual lyrics. So much so that musicians would often receive death threats. One singer by the name of Sheb Razni was murdered outside of his parents' home in 1994. Allegedly, he was slain because, get this, he was on television for a performance, and he allowed 2 female fans to kiss him on the cheeks. That's all it took. A little, and bang. Yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious. Wow. That takes the cake.
It does indeed. Other musicians and producers of the genre were also kidnapped and murdered during the mid-90s as well. Given the unsafe environment of this genre, most Rye musicians relocated to France, where they actually started to see a little bit more success, obviously. So I mentioned this fella before, Sheb Khaled. Khaled is by far the most popular musician to ever come out of Algeria. He was one of these musical refugees to find success internationally. And like I said, yeah, he's one of the most popular singers, not just in Algeria, but in the Arabic world as a whole. His rise to national fame was mainly due to the efforts of a fella called Lieutenant Colonel Hosni Snoussi, the director of the State-Supported Arts and Culture Office. Basically, this guy, he took Khaled under his wing and invited him along with other Rye stars to perform at the state-sponsored Festival de la Jeunesse in Algiers in July 1985. In 1992, he released his self-titled album, which contained his hit song DD, which I'll play for you now, and you may be familiar with. this song went mega. It not only charted in the Arabic-speaking world, it started to enter the top 10 of France, Belgium, and Spain. I imagine a good amount of Algerians started to, promote this stuff who were living there at the time. But they even got international acclaim, and Khaled even went on to appear on The Tonight Show with his producer because his songs had become popular in Bollywood and Hollywood movie soundtracks. So
wow.
this guy is pretty good. All right, yeah.
For real.
So his status continued to grow into the 2000s, and he even performed with Earth, Wind, and Fire at the Grammys.
Get the fuck out. What?
I swear to God, yeah. Where he fused his kind of North African styles with numerous different artists as well. It didn't stop there, though. In 2012, his album C'est la vie went platinum, and you probably recognize this title track, C'est la vie. Have a listen to this. All right, here's the thing. Rye music is controversial, and a couple of these artists are controversial too. Let me talk to you about the controversy surrounding Khaled for a second. His hit song, the one I mentioned earlier, Didi, was accused of plagiarism from another Sheb by the name of Sheb Rabba, to which he was brought to court for. This court case went on for 4 years. And it was eventually thrown out when a tape of an original recording from 1982 was discovered. So I bet there was a big collective once they found that. Do you ever look into cases of musical plagiarism at all, Anna?
Sometimes, but honestly, just a really fun fact. A lot of songs sound similar because they just use the same kind of pattern,
Yeah.
There's only so many chord progressions and modes that you can write in and stuff that everything eventually does kind of end up sounding the same. It's just, sometimes different arrangements or different, melodies, but other than that, that's actually a case why a lot of songs sound the same because they just use the same progressions.
It's true.
So I try my best not to really pay attention to that just because I know the real underlying reason sometimes behind it.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing as well because a lot of times I don't know how they kind of judge these kind of things. I don't know if they include juries who have to listen to musical similarities or if it's just a judge who does that or what. But I remember in recent years, I know Ed Sheeran has been brought to court multiple times for plagiarism. I think he's beaten every single case so far, but yeah, I guess it all just kind of comes down to copyright law and when you recorded these things. Like we mentioned there, that guy, he just happened to find the original recording. If he didn't have that, the verdict could have been very, very different.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of courts, though, Khaled's personal life and the lives of many other Rye musicians is really fraught with allegations of domestic abuse and illegitimate children. So this kind of makes them the first kind of Islamic rock stars, you could say.
Boy.
Other notorious artists as well. I'm going to go into this piece of work. His name is Jeb Mami. All right. So here's some of his good points and some of his awful points. The one thing he's quite famous for is that he was famed for performing with Sting of the Police fame.
Really?
Yeah, he would have been another very popular artists of rhyme music, particularly in the 1980s. Where his reputation really starts to sour is that he was arrested for drugging and forcibly aborting one of his girlfriend's pregnancies.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he ain't the nicest fella. That's
Nope.
hard. Let's move away from the men of this genre and focus on this icon of rhyme music. Her name is Sheikha Remiti, and she's a famous Algerian singer with an incredibly deep voice. It's almost indistinguishable from a male's if you actually listen to it. Take a listen to one of her most popular tracks here, and you tell me, if I hadn't have said this, truthfully, I should have just went into this blind, but just take a listen to her vocals. It sounds like a fella.
يا داني وداني داني دايمي يا لالا انا وغزالي بجبل اللقط النوار انا وغزالي يا لالا انا وغزالي بجبل اللقط النوار انا وغزالي يا لالا انا وغزالي بجبل اللقط النوار انا وغزالي يا لالا انا وغزالي بجبل اللقط النوار يا داني وداني داني دايمي يا لالا انا وغزالي بجبل اللقط النوار انا وغزالي يا لالا انا وغزالي بجبل اللقط النوار.
All right, let's get into her backstory. She was adopted by a sheikh during a turbulent early life. And she would mostly perform in France. Her songs were often seen as crude due to their sexual nature, and she remained illiterate for most of her life. So she really was kind of the epitome of rhyme music, like, music of the poor kind of classes and stuff like that, right? And she was, quite controversial, would often get a lot of backlash, particularly against those kind of very conservative, which made her kind of travel to France back and forth all the time for her own safety. This lifestyle of hers, she would drink, she would smoke, she would, talk openly about sex and things like this. This lifestyle really changed because she took one trip to the holy city of Mecca, on a Muslim pilgrimage, and her repertoire, her lyrics started to change. I guess she found God, let's say, and that's all it took, right?
Wow, God. Okay.
That said, though, like, her musical style didn't change, but her lyrics definitely did.
Yeah, they went down a much cleaner path. Okay.
They sure did. All right, yeah. She performed all the way up to the age of 83.
Wow.
And she died. She died of a heart attack after playing a concert in Paris. So she gave one last final performance in 2006, and sadly kicked the bucket. And I think we have to kick the bucket of this podcast now, Anna. But what do you think of all of that? Learn a little bit about Algeria.
Yeah, and wow, just again, it's crazy how much like music had influence on like, a lot of countries, like, just like history in general. Like music really
historically, politically, religiously.
Yeah, all of the above. That's just crazy to learn about, crazy to know about. But yeah, again, just a surprise nonetheless.
All right, before we end, guys, I have a little proposition for you, fellas, and also to you, Anna. If the reception to this idea is warm, we'll definitely consider it. But we're thinking of doing kind of little bonus episodes where we might answer a few questions from you fellas, and also kind of touch on different subjects. So we might do like around the world of music when it comes to movies, movie soundtracks, video game soundtracks, little, like, around the world of music, religious music, around the world of music, kind of music from communist countries or something like that. We might give that a try at some stage. Not straight away. We still have a lot of countries left to go to. Next week it'll be a little bit shorter, just given that there isn't I'm not to downplay it, but there's not really a whole lot of kind of history and stuff. There'd be a couple of songs to listen to, but it's a relatively kind of small country, and it hasn't produced that much in the way of notable tunes. But we'll get to that when we get to that. What do you think, though, Annie? Do you think you'd like to do some kind of little small bonus episodes, answer a few questions here and there?
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds again a lot more engaging, with the community too. And yeah, we'd never leave out like, certain countries that maybe they don't have much to, like say about music, but nonetheless would still
If
be
we can
more
find music from
information.
there, we'll show them to you. That's our rule here.
Exactly.
All right, rock on. Cool. So until next time, guys. Enjoy the
Until
music. I
next time.
hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed learning this. Hope you found some new tunes to listen to as well. Put them into your playlist. All right, guys, take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.